So, the purpose of this course is to orient students with descriptive and basic inferential statistics. What is expected of the students? One, you will be expected to describe basic statistics and their use in education research. Two, examine the relationship between and among different types of variables of research study. And three, describe the essential characteristics of a set data by representing it in adaptular and graphical forms and computing relevant measures of average, measure of variation, and etc. And also, you'll be expected to demonstrate a competence in the use of statistical package for analysis of data. So on this, the last expectation, I will also expect that each one of you will have a laptop, either a borrowed laptop or you get one, so that we will be able to get also the statistical package for social sciences, that is SPSS, and probably the version 20 and above is the one we are going to be using, so that we will be doing some work in in analyzing data, so that when you finish this course, you will be able to analyze your own data. You'll be able to analyze the data given at any time, or when you will be finishing the course and you have collected data from the field, you'll be able to analyze this data using the SPSS, that is statistical package for social sciences. I will require that, please, you try your best level, so that when we meet in the next class, or let me say in the fourth class, you have it, and when you have it, we are able to now to start exercising or giving our exercises on SPSS, and you have or develop the competencies, so that at the end of the course, when you finish the course, you don't look green on this course. Now, we are going to cover the principles and procedures in education research. It's quite a longer part. This one does not involve a lot of mathematics. It involves a lot of logic, what you're going to be speaking about. We also go to cover measurement scales. That's now the statistics part. We also go to look at the techniques of organizing data. We are going to look at the descriptive statistics. Now, when I talk of descriptive statistics, we're going to be calculating the mean, the median, the mode, and we go to see how we present the data using this. So when we talk about the mean, the median, the standard deviation, and the variation of this data, that is descriptive. We need to have a calculator closer to you, and also you'll need to have either a laptop, which we are going to use this screen doing all our work. I don't think if we will have a face-to-face, or if we'll have face-to-face, we'll have only one class. But I usually do all the calculations online, where you will be able to follow, because when I get to that place, we usually go slow, so that everybody is able to get, or she's able to get. Also, we will look at measures of central tendency. We will look at measures of variability, that is dispersion. That is descriptive statistics. Then we will go to inferential statistics. Inferential statistics, we look at Spearman rank order technique, Pearson product moment technique, symbol regression analysis, and chi-square. And then, of course, I've told you that we need to have some knowledge in the application of SPSS. And we have this. We will also learn how to interpret quantitative data, organize the data, design and present research reports, because this one you'll be expected to do it at the end of this course. When you'll be doing your research, we go out to collect data. You're supposed to organize this data, and after organizing the data, you will be expected to present this data or to a panel or even the seminars you'll be attending. We expect you in this course to have one exam, and the exam will be marked out of 60%, and you'll have a continuous assessment test, which is a CAT, but we will not have a seat in CAT. Our CAT, I'll give a CAT which you'll be doing in our course. This CAT, you will do it in form of an assignment, and you bind it, and then you hand it in. We'll mark it, then we'll award the mark. So I'm going to give an assignment from the beginning. In the second or third lecture, I'll be giving the assignment to all of us so that we will be able to use that assignment. I will expect from you that you write in the chat area, you write your name, your phone number, and your email, because I usually email notes to students. Those who attend the class, if I have your email, after the class, you will get the notes so that you will be able to follow up. I will send the notes in two forms. The presentation, those slides we are using, you'll get the notes in the form of those slides, and you'll also get a prose note on PDF. So you'll get two types of notes. One, the slides you are using in the class, so that you'll be able to follow, and two, you'll get the notes on in PDF form. So please, as we go on with the class, I've seen Stella Nekesa. She has tried to bring in her details. So Shimali Omunanga, Alex, you missed out on your phone number and your email address. Please make sure that you also put your email address and you also put your phone number so that we can have very easy communication. Having communicated to us that information, allow me to exit this course outline so that I bring back the slides so that we can begin straight away on this class. But before I begin, I just need to hear. But I will hear you at the end of the lecture. Please allow me. I'll ask for your response at the end of the lecture. This time, allow me to share the screen for this class, for today's lecture, so that we'll be able to move on. Good. And now move on. Now, what is education research? This is the application of scientific approach to the study of educational problem. And the goal of education research is to discover general principles or interpretation of behavior that can be used to explain, predict, and control events in educational situation. Researchers or research we do in education will help us do the following. Or why do we carry out research? Why do we go to the field to do this educational research? Why are we expected to do research as education experts? One, research helps us to provide solutions to educational problems. Two, research helps us to update the knowledge in the field of education. 3, research helps us to prove or disapprove existing knowledge. 4, research helps us in the replication of studies and the relevance to one's environment. Now, this one I'll explain further. Now, we might be having some studies that were done in, let me say, America, but we want to do the same research in Kenya. So we will be able to replicate these studies here so that we'll be able to have it in our own environment. Remember that CPC, competency-based curriculum, was implemented in other countries, and maybe they had different ways of looking at this because of the environment. They had different problems and they had different things. And because of that, we might not know whether the same conditions can apply in our country. So we go out to replicate such studies so that we have relevant information and we are able to apply such information in our own environment. So research helps us in the replication of studies and application of the same relevant information in our own environment. Also, number 5, we do research in education to help us in the formulation of theories, which can be useful in teaching learning process. Very important that teaching and learning process, it's not a static process, but it's a dynamic process. It changes with time, it changes with environment. So whenever we are doing this research in education, we are able to formulate some theories. And these theories are able to help us or help generations to come in the teaching learning process. Number 6, whenever we do research, we also do recommendations. And these recommendations, they help in teaching and learning, and they also test the effect of the achievement that we have. So these recommendations that come up with different teaching methods, those recommendations that come up with different policies, this recommendation that come up with different ways of us doing things are very important in education. Number 7, which is the last but not the least, is research will help us establish a causal relationship between dependent and independent variables in education. We are going to look at this area of dependent and independent variables as we'll be moving forward, because you'll want to see what's a dependent variable and what is an independent variable, and how are they affecting each other. And that's why we say we establish the causal relationship between this dependent and independent variable. And with the above contained reasons, researchers in education are highly important, hence unavoidable. So you are coming to a field where we want researchers so that they be able to inform the current world, they be able to inform the teaching methods, they are able to inform the policies, they are able to inform even the planning that takes place. So this one is an unavoidable area. You're going to do a research, you're going to write a report, you're going to present this report in seminars, you're going to send this report in a panel so that they look at it. And maybe this one will be the beginning of you doing so many other research. So this course becomes so important for you that you ground yourself in research area, you ground yourself in this area so that when you get the information, you are able to carve out this information and you are able to share or disseminate this information to wherever it's required. Now, there are principles of education research, and these principles are about 7 principles that we use in education research, and they include 1, The first principle is scientific inquiry. Education research should be conducted using scientific inquiry approach, which involves systematic and rigorous methods of inquiry, which are there to collect data and analyze data. We will talk so much about this scientific inquiry in our coming lectures, or in this lecture. We're going to talk much about this scientific inquiry, because education being a social science, it uses a scientific inquiry method to collect and analyze data. The second thing, the second principle of our education research is that we look at the validity of research. This means that whenever we have, we are measuring, whenever we have our instrument, we are going to use for collecting data, or whenever we come up with a variable, we need to measure what we intend to measure, free from bias and free from confounding factors. We will talk about the biases and also the confounding factors later. So some research, when people do research, some will go out in the field. They will want to measure a particular instant, a particular objective. But because they have not stated their work properly, they end up measuring things that are not supposed to be measured in the research, and even reporting on the things they are not supposed to report on. And this affects the validity of their work. So validation or validity of your work is very important when it comes to research. Another thing we got to look at is reliability. It's a principle of educational research. Reliability. This educational research should strive to be reliable. That means that whenever results or whatever results you are going to have or to produce, they must be consistent and stable results that can be replicated. So this research should not be very different, or they should not differ so much with other results that are done elsewhere, because we will be missing on reliability. And this comes to our the instrument we are using when we are doing our data collection. For example, if you are using a questionnaire, you are using an interview schedule, you must make sure that this questionnaire you are using, if I've used this questionnaire on this group and I've gotten the result, the same questionnaires I use on this other group, I will get the same results. So we go to see how we can measure reliability. We will look at how do we measure this reliability in the instruments we use for the research or for our research, and how we are able to interpret such results. Another thing about the principle on education research is objectivity. Whenever we go doing any research, whenever we go carrying any research, we must have objectives. And in most cases, whenever you are formulating your topic, you will be asked, what is your objective? What is your objective? If you have not formulated your objective very well, and these objectives actually, we will come to them. They are supposed to be smart. They are supposed to be specific. They are supposed to be measurable. They are supposed to be reliable. They are supposed to be time-bound. So, and they're supposed to be attainable. So if your objectives are not attainable, they are not specific, they are not measurable, then you run into problem of analyzing your data. So whenever you are formulating your objectives, you must put in mind, this objective are measurable, and we will see how to measure when it comes to, I should tell you in our schedule or in our course outline, I did talk about measuring scales. When we come to the measuring scales, I'll be able to show you how to measure these objectives, at what level are you going to measure these objectives? So that you'll be able to know this objective can be measured at this level, either at ordinal, it can be measured at interval, it can be measured at ratio, and all that. And when it comes to time bound, you're supposed to have the objective that you're going to measure at that particular time and be able to measure them. Not you are going to measure them for 10 years. They are supposed to be measured within your research. Also, reliability and attainability, we will talk about them later. Number 5, whenever you are doing research, another principle that you're supposed to put in mind is ethical consideration. We are supposed to be ethical enough, ethical in mind, and whenever we obtain information, whenever we obtain data from people, we must seek the consent of these participants. We must know that these people have their rights. And whenever you're getting this information, we must know that there is privacy and there is confidentiality. Now, people, they have their confidentiality. We are not going to go to their confidentiality and try to force information out of them. If somebody, you are doing research and you are wanted to interview somebody and they refuse to grant you an opportunity for them to be interviewed, it's their right. You don't force them. And even if you see the information, as a researcher, you see the information and you want to use that information, you will always seek consent before you use that information. And this is why when you are going to be doing the research, you will be required to have permits. You are going to be required to have your permits, and you are going to be having letters from the university, from the Minister of Education, from the county directors of education, from whichever area you are going to do the work, from the county commission. You are going to have letters to allow you to have. So these are letters that are supposed to be used for ethical purposes, so that you are doing an ethical thing. When you are dealing with children, children, you need their parent to give you consent before you collect any data from them. So if you are going to collect data from children, you're supposed to know that that one is an area you are going to approach with a lot of caution. You're not supposed to approach it casually. So it's very important that you know that. Another thing, another principle we use in education research is generalizability of our data. Generalization of the data. We are collecting the data from the field and from a sample, from a small proportion of the population. But can we be now say that this is now what is the trend in the entire population? Like you are studying students from Bungoma County. Can you generalize the results in all the counties, in the whole country? That's generalizability. Are we able to give a meaning to the results we have had? So whenever you go to the field, whenever you are collecting data, you're supposed to know that there are principles that you are going to adhere to. The principle of generalizability, and what underlies it. What is your sample population? And is this sample population arrived at with all what the principles of research, or you just came up with this population without following the due process? So it's very important that you know that the generalizability of your data, or your generalizability of your research findings, there are several things you have to, there are several conditions you have to fulfill before we can be able to generalize your data. Number 7, another principle of education is transparency. Educational research should be transparent, meaning that researchers should clearly report their methods, findings, and the limitation to allow others to evaluate their policy and practice. For those who are arriving now, I did say that in the chat area, please make sure that you write your name, your phone number, and your email address. so that you'll be able to get the notes for this lecture. Another principle is practical implication. Education research should have practical implications, meaning that the findings should be relevant and useful for informing educational policy and practice. Then, number 9, another principle for education research is collaboration. Education research should be conducted collaboratively, meaning that researchers should work together with the stakeholders, such as educators and policymakers. This to ensure that the research is relevant and meaningful to them and can be translated into practice. And finally, number 10, the principle number 10 of education research, it should be continuous improvement. This means that education research should strive to continuous improvement, meaning the researchers should assess, evaluate their methods, findings, and implications to identify areas for improvement and build on existing knowledge. Can we move on? Now, we go back now, we are going to start one by one. We are starting with the principle number 1, scientific inquiry. Now, what are the steps? So scientific inquiry is a systematic and structured approach to investigating phenomena or answering questions about a natural world. And the steps in scientific inquiry generally include the first one. Whenever you are doing an education research, you must have a question. You must have a question. And you will strive to answer that question. Identify, this question also can come in the form of a problem. Identify the question. Which question are you going to answer? Or which problem are you going to solve? Which problem? And that's why you ask students when they bring their work. In most cases, we ask them, what is your problem? What are you striving to solve? What is the question you are going to answer? And many have a forest of words, but nothing is in those words. So it's very important that you know that we are going to get a problem, and this problem or this question should be specific, should be testable. It can be tested, and it should be based on observable phenomena. Observable. So you not just go to come up with things and say that this is what I think. No, in education research, when you're doing scientific inquiry, this problem you're having, it should be specific problem. So sometimes I ask students when they are presenting their work, what is your problem? And I don't see the problem in their work. I just see statements put together, but they have not seen any problem. Like in the current situation, a student doing a research on CPC, you must have seen a problem in CPC, that's competence-based curriculum. You must have seen a problem. And after seeing this problem, you will go down to solve this problem. You'll bring this problem and you'll face this problem in form of a question. And you'll strive to answer that question whenever you are in this. You'll strive to answer the question. You'll strive to do whatever you are doing. And when you answer that question, that's now we take it as a finding, because you'll have a question that will be taking you to the field. You'll have a problem that will be taking you field, and you are going to solve, or you are going to give an answer to that problem. Now, what are the criteria for selecting the problem that is under study? You're not just haphazardly have the problem, but you're supposed to have a criteria for having this. The following are criteria which should guide the potential researcher in selecting a problem, particularly in the field of education. Number one, the problem selected must be capable of generating a solution which will be additive to the body of knowledge in the field of education. Can I repeat that one again? The problem selected must be capable of generating a solution which will be additive to the body of knowledge in the field of education. And these problems which call for solutions are open for research studies. Number two, the problem should be one which will generate further research. So if you are having a problem and you see that after generating the information, at the end of that research, nobody else can attempt that part of the research again, don't go for such. Look for a problem that should be able to generate further research. For example, an investigation in the relationship between residence type and academic achievement may lead to another investigation into residence with psychomotor skills achievement relationship. So when you do this research, kind of research, you are supposed to know that open up that your research should be able to move to the next level, or can be able to generate further research. Number three, the problem should be one which the researcher is interested in. Please, please, please on this. Don't ever choose a problem you don't have interest in, or because you saw somebody doing it and you also want to do it. Please, 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 you must have interest. Many people have abandoned their research because they thought another person was doing it and they thought that they are going to do it. And as a result, they have abandoned their research because they didn't have any interest in it. So make sure that the research problem you have chosen, you have an interest in it. And this interest must generate, it's something that inspires you. It's something that makes you to, wants you to do more. Something that gives you inspiration. So please don't go for a problem that is problematic and you cannot do it. Another thing, number four, the problem must be visible in the situation in which the researcher finds himself. Now, this means that don't do a research where you are going to look for data and you might not get this data. Or you're doing a research where you're going to have a lot of financial problems in order for you to collect this data. Please don't try that, because you might get into headwinds. If you are to get the research problems, you must be able to gain the data that will give you whatever you need. And hope if we do that, everything is going to be okay. Number five, the problem should be investigated. The problem should be able to investigate the relationship between several variables. If you find that your problem is not having a variable that can be compared, don't go for such. Okay, my screen has dropped. My screen has dropped. Please let me fix it. Caro, confirm that you are seeing my screen?
Yes, Doc.
Oh, you are seeing my screen, eh? Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It had dropped. So I think I've gotten it back. Now, number 6, the problem must be massive enough for the level at which the study is being conducted. You know, I usually tell PhD students that sometimes they are doing a research that's supposed to be done by a master's student. Because sometimes they are doing some work. When you look at it, it's not massive enough at that level. So also at master's student, I've seen some students also, they want to do a study that it can be done at a PhD level. So whenever you are doing, you will be guided that this one, just go for this area, go for this area. But you don't go for some studies that might give you a lot of problems. Like, for example, at your level, you say you're going to study a study that goes the rest of the country, Kenya. It will give you trouble. So you're supposed to look and see this problem. You can break it so that it can fit your level. So these are 6 criteria that we are supposed to use when selecting a problem. Number 2, the step in scientific inquiry. The first one, I said, ask a question, or there must be a problem. You are going to answer by asking a question. Number 2, conduct background research. So in your work, I'll expect you to do some background research to see what other people have done before you embark on your own research. Once you have a question, you should conduct a background research to learn more about the topic and identify what is already known about that topic. This can involve reviewing scientific literature, talking to experts, or conducting preliminary experiments. So if there is no literature, you can conduct preliminary experiments. Or if you are not very sure, you can get experts and you ask them questions in that area. So that is conducting background research. And I'm going to dwell somehow also on the literature review that gives us the background. When you do literature review, what are you supposed to do? When you do the literature review, what is the function of literature review in research work? One, the review of the literature helps define the boundaries of research work. The researcher is able to identify where previous research work started from and where they stopped. And in order to identify where he can also commence his work or our own study, he is able to evaluate the threshold of contribution of various research in his own field of interest to the existing knowledge, and subsequently identify the gaps where his own study can be of great value. Number two, the instruments that you are going to use, which might be questionnaires, observation rating scales, and extra, which were used by previous researchers when identified, can be reviewed for relevance for the current research and subsequent modification to suit the environment and the population of the study. Number three, review of the literature also aids the researcher to relate his study to affirm or reject a theory after one has conducted a study into it. Affirmation and rejection can only come after a careful review of such a theory has been made. Number four, the review of the related literature is also capable of preventing an intentional replication of the previous research studies. So this one will prevent the replication of the previous studies. What are the methods we use when we do literature review? One, we do it from previous research works in journals and thesis. Two, we look at the theoretical works in texts. Three, we look at the interview recorded in cassettes, whether it's audio or video visual. Or we begin with the most recent studies in our field, then work backwards through the earlier volumes. And this one, I should warn you that sometimes when you're doing education research, you are supposed to bring us the current, about 5 years. But don't go and get research that was done 20 years ago and you bring it. That one might mislead the stale knowledge. Look for, like, especially on your references. Those references should be above 5 years or below 5 years, not above, below 5 years. So the research that was done 5 years, 4 years, 2 years, 2 years, and 1 year, or 1 month. It will be more relevant than the research you are going to have in 20 years. But there are some books, like the Bible. We are doing religious studies. That one, we don't dispute it. And there are also encyclopedias and all that. We can't dispute the information in them. So there are some areas where you get information and you are told, okay, this one we cannot, but when you are doing the research, you're supposed to consider findings that are 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. That is more recent. Read the abstract or summary section of the report first to determine whether it's relevant to your question. So don't start reading the whole document. Just look at the abstract. What was this person trying to do? Look at the summary section. Methods of reviewing literature. Number 6, before taking notes, skim the report quickly to find those sections that are related to your question. Because sometimes you might get somebody with so many books in the library. Nowadays we have so many books in the digital world, and you find that these books are not adding any value to you. Make notes directly on a file card as they are easier to sort. Organize them in sheets of paper, back of envelopes, and so on. And this is a method we used in our days when we were doing some research. I don't know if it's relevant nowadays because people are using computers and they have sorting softwares which can do their work very fast. So if you are still using our method of file cards, sheets of paper, packs of envelopes, and so on, you can use them. Number 8, write a complete bibliography reference for each work. Whenever you read any, and I should emphasize here, whenever you read any literature and you see that it's relevant, please, that reference, that bibliography reference should be written somewhere so that it will come to your work. Sometimes I see students fumbling that they have very good points or they have very good quotation, but they cannot reference that work or they cannot pinpoint who did that work. And when you don't give reference where it's due, that one is called plagiarism. So you'll see your work will say that it's plagiarized because you fail to acknowledge the source of the information. You know, research and plagiarism are closely related. If you are doing research and you are able to acknowledge the source of the knowledge, acknowledge the source of the information you are put in your work, you acknowledge that is research. But if you fail to acknowledge, that's plagiarism. So people do a lot of, we do nowadays, we scan through your work with some softwares like Turnitin and all that. And you will know that this is the percentage of the work you are able to plagiarize. So very important, you know, that whenever you are doing your work, please make sure that you are acknowledging, you are writing down the bibliographic references so that you are not gotten in this mess of plagiarism. And to facilitate sorting and organization of data, do not put more than one reference on each card. Yeah, if you are using cards, be sure to indicate which part of the notes are a direct quotation from the author and which are your own paraphrases. Now, this is where the problem comes in with many researchers. There are things they are paraphrasing, there are things they are quoting directly verbally from the researcher. You are supposed to know which one and which one you are paraphrasing so that it can suit your own environment. Now, there is another area that is so critical to the background of the study. We call it theoretical framework or a conceptual framework. The theoretical framework is very important. And this theoretical framework, with the theories you are going to use, you know, there are theories, several theories that your work will be based on. The research work will be based on. These theories is linked with the problem or is not forced. Theoretical framework is very important. Now we have the conceptual framework. The conceptual framework is now showing the relationship between your independent variables and your dependent variables. What kind of relationship do exist between these variables? Is there any relationship that is existing? And is there any interference with intervening variables? So you are supposed to show that these are my independent variables, and this is my dependent variables, and this is how they are affected. And there are intervening variables that are coming in my work. we'll look at that later, the conceptual framework, because it's very important, because when I want to see what you're doing, I will look at your topic, and after looking at your topic, I will very fast go to your conceptual framework to see whether there is a relationship on the variables you are talking about or not. But if I see there is no relationship between what you're talking about, then it becomes so hard for us to say that this study can go on. So it's very important that this conceptual framework informs your objectives. Conceptual framework informs your research question. Conceptual framework involves the topic of study, or the one you are saying you are going to study. Very important that when I look at a conceptual framework, I look at the research conceptual framework, I'm able to see how it's related to environment, how it's related even to the design you are going to use. Now, step number 3 in scientific inquiry, you form an hypothesis. If you are going to use inferential statistics to analyze your work, then it's very important that you form an hypothesis. And an hypothesis is a tentative explanation for the phenomena that you are investigating. And it should be based on your background research, and it should be testable through experimentations. So many students have seen they don't like going a hypothesis way. They like just answering a research question. They form a research question and they go answering that research question. But hypothesis is a good way of testing to see whether you can be able to get that problem that is at hand, and you hypothesize about it, and you are able now to answer that hypothesis. How do you formulate the hypothesis? There is a null hypothesis represented by H with a 0 as a superscript. And this null hypothesis is always claiming there's no relationship. Null hypothesis will always claim that there is no relationship between your study variables, because you'll be looking at your variables and you'll want to see whether there is a relationship between your dependent variables and your independent variable. So when you see that there is no relationship between your null hypothesis, will always claim that there is no relationship. And this is how it is framed, that there is no significant relationship between assignment and performance in mathematics. So assignment is my assignment here. Let me look for my pen here, because I think I should get the pen, and we should now start getting the pen or something to highlight. So here, this assignment, it's our IV. And this performance is our DV. DV. So the IV and the DV are very important. So we have to say that there is no relationship between the IV is the independent variable and the DV is the dependent variable. So we are supposed to get that that very well, because if we get it very well, we will be able to do our research. Now there is another hypothesis, and I don't want to go into so much details here. I think I should stop there today. I should stop there today, because it's past 6:30, and people have, I know some are still in the offices, they need to travel back home, and some are at their homes, they need to, so I'll get some 15 minutes, some not 15, 10 minutes, so that I can get your responses, and I will be able to end the class there. I will start on formulating of hypothesis when we start the next class. So I will stop there. and ask Alex Wafla, anything from your end?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, I don't have much because I managed to join the class late, but I want to plan that next classes I'll join early. But I've liked the way you have run the class. It is thorough. However, I do expect that you will give us some write-up at a later stage. Thank you, Doctor.
If you have sent your email address, you'll get a write-up.
Okay, thank you. I will do.
Tilda Nangila Masika. How are you?
Fine, Doctor.
Yes. Anything from you?
Okay, what I can say, the lesson has been good. There's nowhere I can see there's a problem. Your clarification is good. And the lesson has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah Tieno.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
What I can say, Doctor, is that the lesson has been good. Your explanation is clear. And if somebody is just attentive, then we are good to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Simuli Alex. Simali, not Simuli. Simali Alex.
Hello, Daktari.
Hello.
I'm grateful that this lesson has been good. I've really enjoyed and been able to capture most of the things that you've addressed. Thank you, Daktari.
Thank you. Stella Nekesa.
Good evening.
Good evening.
What I can say is that I had a challenge at first joining the class, but for now you are audible enough. I can hear you clearly. So far, so good. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. Saina Inganga.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
From my side, the lesson has been good and well understood. So that's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Saina. Finally, Carol.
Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening.
The lesson has been wonderful. So we started with some challenges. This is the first lesson we're having on Zoom. Mostly we have lessons on Google Meet, but I'm happy that most of us, almost all of us, managed to join. So it has been so wonderful. And I'm sure Dr. will continue helping us because in the previous research, we still had some challenges on theoretical, conceptual framework, and hypothesis. So I'm sure as we go on, we are going to understand more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. An announcement, Carol?
Maybe to my fellow classmates, what I can say is we join class on time so that we also finish on time. And then also, I'm trying to reach other lecturers. So kindly, when I post a link, let's join on time so that we communicate and have some arrangements about date and time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol. You know, I was looking for these class members. I really looked for you last week. You know, this is the third week. I usually want to start my classes early, finish them on time, and we do. So I usually use Zoom because I usually record, and you'll get the recordings of all the classes. I will send you the recording of all the classes. That's why I usually use Zoom. In Google Meet, I'm not able to record. So you'll just accept that we use Zoom. Itakuwa sawa sawa darasa? Ama kuna mtu anasema hapana? Yes,
iko
Carol?
sawa.
Sawa.
Iko sawa hivyo. So let us use Zoom so that when I record the classes, I be able to send for you, because I know we are going to get to that area of mathematics where somebody will want to review the class, review again, so that be able to understand. That is the only reason as to why I use Zoom. Thank you very much. You can now leave the class at so that I can also be able to leave. So I'll be waiting for you to leave the class so that I can also leave.
Thank you, Doctor.